According to Bert Hellinger, the German psychotherapist, of whom we talked about in section 1, the ancestral beliefs video, families have an order of precedence. Those who enter the system first take precedence over those who enter later. This means that the younger ones, or those who enter the system later, cannot assume the functions and responsibilities of those who come earlier. He goes on to say, quote, "In the natural order of love between parent and child, the first principle is that parents give and children take. It's not a question of just any kind of giving and taking, but the giving and taking of life. As parents give to their children, they are not giving something that belongs to them. They give what they themselves are, and they can neither add anything to it nor diminish it in any way, nor hold back anything. They give themselves to their children as life, without additions or deletions. Accordingly, children can only take their parents exactly as they are when they take life from them, and they can neither add nor delete anything, nor can they refuse any part of what they are given. Bottom line, parents give, children take, period." In the Holy Quran, there's a beautiful quote that says, "No bearer of burdens may bear the burden of another." Did you know that we're biologically hardwired to not suffer? When we're at rest, we have a steady heartbeat, our system is regulated and functions normally. The moment we experience conflict, our system moves immediately into action. Our heart rate increases, we tense up, we feel anxious, and then we want to either flee, react, or freeze. Adyashanti defined suffering as the belief that the source of the hurt lies somewhere outside ourselves. Do you remember the Cascafayette quote, which is, "My experience is that the source of suffering is in the ways we suffer for other people, is an unworkable attempt to say I love you." And yet another way of saying this is a quote from Carl Buchheit from NLP Marin, which is, "If it's this bad with you, then in your honor I will make sure it never gets better with anyone else, I promise." So, things get tangled when children take on a role that isn't appropriate for them. They certainly may want things to be better and will do whatever it takes to have it that way. They want their parent to be sober, or go to therapy, or leave the abusive spouse, or get a job, stick up for him or herself, establish boundaries, and ask for what they need. But the tangle happens when the child ends up playing the role of the adult. I remember my dad being so drunk on a flight, and I was so stressed out and worried the entire time. As we were deplaning, I suddenly remembered my father didn't have his briefcase in his hand and quickly spoke up and said so. We had to wait at the front of the plane while a flight attendant went to retrieve it, and when she came back with the briefcase in hand, she turned to my dad and she said, "You have a very responsible daughter." That may have been true, but I was 7. This is the level of inappropriate bigness that children take on in a family system as an attempt to alleviate the pain of the parent. When these children become adults, they may find themselves repeating similar patterns as their parents in an unworkable attempt to say, "I love you." And then, rather than standing in their own power, in their own success, in their own transformation, they give it up to varying degrees, all the while saying, probably unconsciously, "If it's this bad with you, then in your honor, I will make sure it never gets better with anyone else. And that'll give you a chance to go back and get it right at some point." We can start to see where entanglements might be in the family system when we look at someone's deepest pain as that is the reflection of their most profound devotion. We find ourselves embroiled in family disputes because we've somehow gotten ourselves tangled up in something. That pain and that devotion, which may look like a member who gets disowned, or maybe gets ridiculed constantly, or might be the go-to person for everything. Perhaps there's a bully in your family, or someone who never speaks up. What about one who shows up to take care of it all and then says they're never appreciated? What is your relationship to these people? And how many of them are you? When we discount ourselves, when we make ourselves so small, what we end up doing is taking ourselves out of the equation. We relinquish our power. We become out of alignment with our life purpose. And when we make ourselves super tiny, we might find ourselves becoming falsely big. When you diminish yourself, you automatically augment others, and they may not appreciate that. It's like standing in the role of a victim, looking to feel empowered, but going about it in reverse. What you're doing instead is you're using blame rather than accountability. You might hear things like, because this is always happening to me, I now have to, or you're making me do this, or if I don't do this, it'll never get done. But accountability is the resolution. It's the key to alignment, and more importantly, it's the invitation to step into your power, into your joy, your happiness, and all that you fully desire. Until you allow others outside of yourself to take accountability for their actions, and you for yours, you'll find yourself preoccupied, distracted, and maybe even unwilling to do what you need done. When you allow others to take accountability for their actions, you invite balance back into the family system.